Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside the Issues, sponsored by the League of Women Voters Richfield. My name is Maureen Scalia. I serve as the moderator on the program. And tonight we're very fortunate to have with us Steve Devich, who after 38 years of serving Richfield is going to retire at the end of November, right?
That's exactly right, Maureen. November 30th, 2018, my life is going to change dramatically.
I bet.
Dramatically.
And I can honestly say the city of Richfield owes you a great debt. I think you've taken us through some trying times, challenging times, and some very successful times. So,
Thank you.
and we're going to talk more about that. But first of all, let's let the viewers know something about Steve Devich.
Well, yeah, pretty straightforward guy, pretty simple. I'm from Ely, Minnesota, born up on the range.
Yeah.
The end of the road.
At the end of the
Literally
road.
the end of the road. I went to the Vermilion College in Ely for the first 2 years, and I went to the University of Minnesota, graduated from the University of Minnesota, moved to Colorado for 4 years, became a journeyman carpenter in that time. Yeah, and because I thought, what a great trade to know how to be a carpenter. And then I was going to take my business and economics degree and use that with my carpentry and go into construction management.
Oh,
That was the
I
idea.
see.
Then I came back to the Twin Cities and I needed a job, and it was kind of interesting. The city of St. Louis Park had a city clerk position open, and I just applied for it, got an interview, and they hired me. And and then 4.5 years later, I had gone back and taken more coursework in public administration, working towards a master's degree, and was hired by the city of Richfield in the spring of 1980 as the what they called a personnel manager back then. And that's how my career started with the city of Richfield in early May of 1980.
So someone who really wanted to work more in the corporate world, the construction world,
Yes.
somehow ends up in public
Right.
service all these years.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And when I came to Richfield, again, back then it was personnel, today, of course, it's human resources. When I did that, I thought, wow, there's a great opportunity with my business, my economics, working and in the construction trade from basically building buildings from the ground up, and then to really get some years under me in human resources. I was ready to be the VP of human resources somewhere.
Well, life took a different path.
It did indeed.
And you served the city of Richfield. Going back, you grew up on the Iron Range.
Yep.
Does that mean family of miners?
Yes, exactly. My family heritage, everyone is from basically Slovenia.
Slovenia.
And,
so that's the eastern half of what used to be Czechoslovakia?
No, it's actually it is the northwestern tip of what was Yugoslavia.
Oh, there. Okay.
And then it's a little alpine country, about a population of 3 million people.
Ah.
And then my one grandfather was from Croatia. And of course they came to the Iron Range in search of jobs, and yes, they were miners.
Okay.
I never really had a big desire to be a miner. Actually, my father didn't either, so I needed to go in a different direction.
Okay, and so there was encouragement, too, for you to seek the wider world there, maybe.
Yeah, our family put a lot of emphasis on making sure that I got an education, and how important it was for me to go to college.
Yeah.
And growing up in a small town of 6,000 people, and not really having much experience in a bigger city, you're kind of limited into what your experiences are.
Well, and I have to chuckle at that because my dad said to me, I grew up on a dairy farm in western Stearns County, and he said, get out of Stearns County, meaning, come and seek the wider world and experience.
Yes.
Things that, he couldn't do, and I'm sure it was the same way with your folks. Are Iron Rangers different? Do you think that had an impact?
Yeah, I do think Iron Rangers are different, and Iron Rangers are pretty darn straightforward, and pretty inclined to do things the way we think is the right way to do it, and so yeah, I picked up a lot of that kind of thing, and sometimes can be a little different. I don't know if you remember Governor Perpich
Yes.
from the
yes.
Iron Range, and
He was a character.
He's a good example of an Iron Ranger.
And I think he liked to brag about that a little bit.
Yes, he did.
Too. So, in the early 80s, you started working at Richfield. What was it about Richfield that made you want to stay and not seek to go elsewhere?
Well, the one thing that struck me when I came to Richfield, it was a community of, I thought, were very nice people. Okay. And there were a lot of people who I met who were just genuinely nice to me. And the council members that I knew from back in the day, they were all nice people. And the staff that I worked with, it was a nice organization. And I thought, maybe I'll try this for a while before I go into the corporate world.
And so you just kind of climbed, instead of climbing the corporate ladder, you climbed the social or local government
ladder. In about 1984, I competed for the Administrative Services Director Assistant City Manager position, and was given the position, and that's what I did until I was promoted to City Manager at the end of 2004, beginning of 2005, and then of course between 1984 and 2004, between city managers, I was the acting city manager twice, once for about 9 months and once for about, I think, 6 or 7 months.
Okay. And so that was Prosser there, or was there somebody before him?
When I came to Richfield, it was Carl Nolenberger was the city manager.
That's right.
Then Carl left, and John Cartwright was there for 2 years.
Okay.
And then I was the acting city manager, which I think was surprising considering I only had been there for 5.5 years or so, and they made me acting city manager. And I was acting city manager that time for, I think it was about 9 months. And then Jim Prosser came.
Oh, Prosser. Yes.
And then Prosser stayed until 1999. When I once again was asked to be acting city manager.
Okay, so you had some good mentors there, especially with Jim Prosser, probably, right?
Jim Prosser is a fantastic city manager and an even more fantastic human being.
Yeah.
I just enjoy him so much. A great guy to work for, a great sense of humor, a sharp mind, and a kind heart.
Oh, yes, I think Richfield did well under his management too. So maybe it's time to say, what does the city manager do? If you want to break it kind of into categories.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's kind of interesting when I talk to people who don't know local government and they ask me, well, yeah, what do you do? Well, I'm city manager, and they go, oh. Obviously have no idea what I do. And I think that the way people are accustomed to local government, especially if you came from a smaller city, you look at a city council and a mayor, and in those kinds of situations, the city is really run by the city council, more or less. In a city manager form of government, it's different. It's really modeled after more of a corporate structure, where the city manager is the equivalent, basically, of a corporate CEO, and the city council directs the city manager, of course, and hires and fires the city manager, and lets the city manager know what direction the city needs to go in terms of policy, et cetera. And then the city manager, in turn, directs the rest of the staff. And so the public safety director, the fire chief, the finance director, the community development director, the liquor operations, they all report directly to the city manager. So I have overall authority over all of the departments. And so those are the folks that I have the most direct contact with. And so, I look at it as though It's like a boat going across the lake, and the city council is steering, and I'm in charge of the guys and the gals who are rowing the boat to get to where they want to go.
And stoking the engine.
And stoking
if it's
the
a
engine,
steamboat or,
right.
or a
Yes.
ocean liner. So you really do need to know lots about everything, at least something about everything. Although you do have staff actually doing the actual work, but still it falls on you to.
You're absolutely right. It does. I think every individual that gets into the city manager position, has areas that they're stronger in, and others that they really aren't that well versed in. I think for running a city as a city manager, pretty much like running a business, the two most important things to know are how to manage people and how to manage your finances. If you can do those two things, and then the other part is be smart enough in managing people that you surround yourself with some pretty doggone good, hardworking, intelligent people. And then you're probably set up to do pretty successful job. If you can't do those two things, you're in trouble. It just so happened that that a lot of my coursework before I came to Richfield even was human resources. So that was a real strength, and I've always had an aptitude for math, finance, that kind of thing. And so I took coursework in that too. I don't like the day-to-day accounting sort of thing. That would drive me crazy. I can't do that. But I like the big picture, financial things, and that's what I think I'm the best at.
So one of the council people told me that she was really impressed with your expertise in finances, being able to, and I think what she was really talking about was your ability to take complex numbers and all these numbers and be able to kind of digest and regurgitate it so that anybody on the same council could see what was going on.
Well, you're right, Maureen. That is a challenge. You're talking about our general fund in Richfield is about $24 million.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And the general fund pays for the kind of things that folks see on the street every day. Your police, your fire, your public works people keeping your streets clean, your parks, people keeping your parks clean, the people who look on redevelopment of our community, those kinds of things. And so managing all of that and putting it into a framework where everyone can understand it's a little bit complex. You're right. And on top of that, you have one of the largest municipal liquor operations in the state of Minnesota, us, and we're probably somewhere in the $11 million gross sales a year.
Wow, I had no idea. I mean,
Yes.
I know we've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, right?
Yep, 4 stores.
We may as well say, a little advertising doesn't hurt. We've got one at 65th and Penn
Yeah.
and 65th and Lindale.
Yes.
And then over on Cedar and 66th.
Yes.
And then on the Crosstown in Lindale, essentially. Not Crosstown, 494.
Yeah, 77th. And,
Yeah,
right. And actually, as long as we're talking about that, 2 things I will say. One of the things that I wanted to do before I left was rebrand the stores. And people who might go there can see the logo kind of goes back to the day when Richfield was the bright red Richfield.
Yes.
And that's emboldened on all the stores. So everybody knows it's Richfield Liquor, and then it's Blue Liquor underneath it. So we remodeled our stores.
Yes.
And they're state of the art. They're beautiful stores. We put some signage outside so people would know where we are, and those incidentally, all the signs are all integrated together. So if we have snow emergencies and such, we can use that for those kind of things. Or if there's some kind of a missing alert, we can use it for those kind of things.
Yes.
So there's a lot of benefit. But the thing that's most important is that the profits from the liquor store go back into this community for our parks and recreation, those kinds of other capital needs. That pays for the park buildings that people see. It pays for the pool that we have. It pays for, built the mini golf, the park shelter. All the things that you see came out of liquor profits. And so what I really love is when we can draw folks from other cities, Minneapolis, or people
Or
passing by,
Bloomington,
to come and spend their money in Richfield Liquor because, again, that money comes back to our community, and we put, close to $500,000 into parks out of the profits every year, and hopefully with the rebranding and what we're doing going forward, we can increase that.
Well, and obviously, especially with Total Wines and their concept of how they sell
Yeah.
liquor, I mean, there's competition there. Personally, I tried to tell people in Richfield, buy your liquor from the Richfield stores, even if you pay a couple more dollars. It goes directly back into our parks and systems.
That's exactly true. And really, we're pretty darn competitively priced.
Yes, you are.
We try very hard to do that.
Well, and that's wonderful. I've been in a couple of the newly remodeled stores, and it's nice. Very well planned, designed, and up to date.
Yeah, one other thing about the finances, so there's the general fund,
Yeah.
there's the liquor fund, and then on top of that, there's other funds like through the Housing Redevelopment Authority, HRA, and the newly created Economic Development Authority, EDA. Those are other separate funds that are used for redevelopment. And then you have the whole capital budget on top of that, which is, again, I suppose in a given year, a capital improvement program might be, I don't know, maybe $40 million, depending upon what we think we might get from other sources to help for different projects. So you're managing a lot of money. For example, we're on the front end of redoing our infrastructure. I think one of the reasons that Richfield looks and stays looking so attractive is that we put money back into our parks, our streets. Streets are extremely expensive to maintain and to rebuild, and so to that end, we have. People can see we're in a 6-year plan of redoing every street in town, every residential street in town. And obviously some of the big stuff that we're doing, 66th Street, that's a county project, but we're into it with our up to our elbows in our sleeves. But we did Portland Avenue with the county, and now we're looking at doing Glendale Avenue. So, along with that, you've got to be able to manage the bonding that you need to pay for those projects, and ultimately the debt service that you have to collect in your taxes to pay the debt back.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like maintaining your home. Same
Right.
thing.
Yeah, no, people need to, and government really needs to reinvest in both of the buildings and streets, whatever they own or have, they really need to keep redoing it because nothing lasts forever.
Exactly.
And people complain about their taxes going up, and well, first of all, people complain about their taxes going up the last couple of years, and I say to them, how much did your house go up in value? I mean, for every dollar the house goes up, the tax is going to
Right.
follow. I mean,
Yes.
and that's really the property tax for the city is important to keep everything working nicely.
It is. A city like Richfield, probably roughly 70% of the money that we need to pay for our general fund is coming out of property taxes.
Yeah.
And so it's important. Well, a couple things are important. One, again, is that we keep our community looking good so that business wants to come in. And you've seen a lot of that happening in Richfield. We're kind of the gem right now of commercial investment. But that's wonderful because putting all that commercial tax base in the community helps to buy down the burden that you would have on single-family homes. And for example, for the tax levy that we're in the midst of right now for 2019, the impact on an average Richfield home is really going to be fairly minimal. I think it's something like $16 for the year.
$16 a year is
Yeah, right. And part of that is because our tax base is expanding, and when some of the other stuff that that we see gets built and comes online, that's going to keep on helping as well. So,
well, and I think people need to know that I think under your CEO position, so to speak, you have had to manage that financial and to keep expenses down as low as possible. I know in the Richfield Sun Current article on you, you talked about what you had to do as we went into the Great Recession, and in terms of staff, you cut pretty drastically.
Yeah.
I mean, if you remember the numbers, you can let our audience know
yeah,
them.
no, I remember the numbers because that was a very painful thing. When I came in as city manager, we didn't have a lot of financial reserves. And the city of Richfield, through a revenue sharing, so to speak, local government aid, gets money from the state. And, you know, back in the day, we were getting maybe $4 million a year. Well, and maybe our general fund budget back then might have been more like, I don't know, maybe 16, 17 million. Well, if you're getting 4 million from an outside source, and all of a sudden you get a recession and the state says, whoa, wait a minute, you're not getting that money anymore. You can't just take that kind of an increase and dump it on the taxpayers. So you've got to take a look at your operations. About the time that I came into the city manager position, we had about 230 full-time employees. I'm running right now with 191. And that's a significant.
That's 40.
Yeah,
That's
right.
a big number.
That was a big number. That was a very painful time. Probably one of the worst times that I had over there. Especially the year where local government aid got unallotted by the governor. We had gone through the year anticipating we were going to get that money, obviously. And when we struck our tax levy in the beginning of the year, we were certified to get that, whatever, how many millions of dollars that was. And so we levied less property tax knowing that other money was coming in.
It was almost guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah, we thought it was guaranteed. And then all of a sudden, about July, August, we get the word that we're not getting a huge part of that money. Well, I only have, maybe 5 months left to make up the difference, and I can't pull money out of thin air. So I had to call employees into the council chambers and talk to them, tell them what was happening, and that, unfortunately, there was no way out of it but to do some reductions in staff. And I told them I don't know exactly where that is right now, but we're going to be working on it, and there's nothing else I can do.
Yeah.
But it was an awful time. I mean, employees didn't want to make eye contact with me, kind of like I would, there's somebody I could, read. Oh, that was an awful time.
Yeah,
Awful.
that's probably the worst thing.
Oh.
Because, yes, they were your employees, but at one point they were almost your coworkers, too.
Oh, yes, they were my coworkers. Yeah, and a lot of them, were probably hired when I was, the HR manager back in the day. So, yeah, brutal.
That was awful.
Yeah.
So that was probably the worst time of your 38 years.
Yeah, that was about the worst.
And let's see, I don't think you were city manager with the big tree controversy on Portland Avenue.
No, that was my friend Jim Prosser. He took the bullet there.
And then the Best Buy controversy, that might have been before your time, but you're reaping, that has gone pretty darn well since.
Well, actually, that was my time.
Oh, it was your time.
Because there was a big hotel convention complex that was going to go in that area. And it sort of fell apart. And what had happened back then is that the developer who was looking at doing that had talked to a lot of the people who lived there about buying their homes. And even though they were told, there's no guarantee, don't do anything yet, some people did. They bought another home in anticipation. And when that all fell through, that was when I was acting city manager.
You were acting at that point.
And actually, that's when we started working really hard with some other brokers, and we're making the first contacts with Best Buy. So by the time I had left that acting spot about that time, we were already working to get Best Buy to look at consolidating all of their different facilities and bringing them into that area in Richfield.
Okay, which ultimately happened, although there were a lot of controversy and even a lawsuit over that. But
yes, there was. And, whenever you have change,
Yes,
there's
it's
going
hard.
there's going to be people who are reticent to accept it, and I think that whenever you talk about development, I think the first thing that people look at, and it's very natural, is you look at it as, oh my God, what's the worst that could happen here? My house value is going to go down to nothing, and there's going to be cars all over my neighborhood, and oh my gosh, it was one thing after another. The funniest story that I take back out of the Best Buy thing, a lot of the folks who were really concerned about having Best Buy in there, one of the issues was all the traffic it was going to generate, and it was going to be just impossible to move around there. So one day we got a phone call, and it was from a resident who was back to chastising us about what was going to happen when Best Buy opened. It wasn't going to be like now; it was going to be just crazy busy. And we let the conversation go on for a second, not to want to interrupt. But then, when it took a natural pause, we said, "Well, Best Buy opened 6 months ago." So. So it wasn't as bad as people.
Well, I think that, part of the thing that really helped that whole thing was just the well-designed 77th Street.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talk about a way to get across Richfield.
Yes.
That is just so well designed. I mean, I use it a lot,
Yeah.
and every time I go down it, it's considering trying to travel through some other, Edina, Bloomington. I mean, there is just not something that moves that well.
No, you're right. That was something I can't take any credit for, but it was really a great idea to take a look at putting 77th Street through, because one of the things that Richfield needed was a presence on 494, and the way to do it was to make 77th Street, and then between 77th Street and 494, that's where you would put your commercial. And that was a long-range plan. One of the things that Richfield was always lacking, back in the day when this community was being settled, everyone looked at Richfield, and I can't fault them. It was going to be the bedroom community. Folks are going to be working downtown. They were going to be working at the airport, but they would be living in this, very calm and peaceful Richfield. But what happened is we did not get our share of the commercial development that we needed, and so that plan was let's get that moving and get some of that. But and of course along the Cedar Avenue corridor, kind of the same thing. But it takes decades to change that. You have to have the focus and keep on pushing to get that done. But 77th Street was the genesis of getting that started.
Yeah, and it's just unique. First you have shops. Well, first you have Best Buy, then you have shops at Lindale, and then U.S. Bank thought it was so wonderful they
Yes.
moved their corporate headquarters
Right.
into that building.
Yes.
And then you go down the line, and the beauty of the buildings. I mean, these are a car dealership that looks as good as Richfield Bloomington Honda.
Yeah,
I mean, what
right.
car dealership looks that good? And then we have Mitsubishi
Yeah.
moving in, and now Jaguar or something like that's coming.
Well, yeah, Audi
Audi, that's it.
put their beautiful facility, and then just a little bit to the east, Jaguar Land Rover is coming in with their beautiful facility. So yeah, it's a very, very important spot on 494 that people see the value of. The one thing that I've been working on for so many years, and not just me, but a lot of other folks worked hard on it. Former Mayor Debbie Gottel worked very hard on getting the underpass, and Representative Linda Slocum, and I'm going to miss people if I start naming them. So I
Well,
don't
you
wanna
better
do
start
that.
with Martin Sabo.
And Martin Sabo was the genesis of 77th Street, because we would have nothing if it wasn't for Martin Sabo. He got the city of Richfield about over the course of time $65 million to help us with 77th Street, with the Penn Avenue Bridge, with the Lindale Avenue Bridge.
Oh, I didn't know that
Oh,
those
yes.
two bridges
Oh yeah,
were.
that came out of money that Martin got us. There wasn't. Excuse me.
Before we go on,
Yeah.
we better say that Martin Sabo represented Minneapolis and Richfield and
Yes.
a few other suburbs for many years in Congress, the U.S. Congress.
In U.S. Congress, right.
He was very supportive of Richfield.
Oh my gosh, he was. Whenever I saw a Congressman Sabo anywhere, and he probably thought I'd lost my memory or something, but I would always go up to him and always thank him. Congressman Sabo, I can't tell you how thankful I am for what you've done for us, for 77. If it wasn't for the 77th Street, all these things that we're talking, the dealership, the U.S. Bank, all of those things, Best Buy, they wouldn't be there.
Right.
So yeah. And the one thing I will say, the last piece, and again, I started naming names, but Senator Wickland has worked hard on it as well, and everyone that represented Richfield in the legislature, not just the current ones, but even going back, Paul Thiessen worked so hard on it. But the underpass.
Yes,
The
talk
underpass,
about that a little
right.
bit.
The last missing piece of the underpass of 77th Street is an underpass that would go under Trunk Highway 77, and it would just follow along kind of where 77th Street is. We would take out the Motel 6 property because that would have to go, because of the grade, it would have to go under. And then it would come up on the airport side next to the big MTC bus garage.
Oh, that's empty now.
And then it would blend into the, what was 24th Street. Or the-
Oh, okay.
And so what would happen is then we would have a direct connection to the Mall of America, because you come right over the bridge. We'd have a direct connection to both terminals of the airport. And really, we would have a sign, we will have a sign on 494 when you're driving east now and it says the 24th Street exit, it's going to be International Boulevard. And you'd be able to get off there and then come through the underpass and be able to drive all the way into Edina without getting off that road. And I just think that is that's so important. I think it would take a lot of trips off of 494 for one thing. But I mean, to have a straight shot where you don't have to take 494, could get onto International Boulevard, somewhere on France Avenue and drive right to the Mall of America or the airport without getting off. I mean, that I think is important.
Well, even more important than other people, and over the years, those of us that are a little more advanced in age, think about what would happen if there was a big problem on 494 right in that area. There is no way to bypass Cedar and 494.
Right.
I mean, now we have it with American Boulevard.
Yes.
But American Boulevard wasn't there for a while either. And the whole safety idea of, and God forbid, but some kind of either natural or other man-made disaster, we need that.
Oh, we definitely need it. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I wish it could have happened while I was still city manager, but I do think that we will acquire the Motel 6, which is the last thing that has to happen before we can start. And I think that will be happening. I think we'll take possession probably in early 2019. And then after that, we'll be moving right along. Exciting
So
stuff.
it's possible it starts in 2020 or
Yes.
something like that?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
And,
great.
And again,
Yeah, and that's a big thing to do all that digging under there.
oh my gosh, yes, that's going to be a big project.
Yeah, after you got the hole dug, the rest of it comes pretty fast.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Okay. Well, Richfield has that to look forward to, but like you say, a lot of that has been going on for a long time, and yeah, thank heavens under your watch, most of it came to be,
Right.
except for the actual
Except for the
digging.
actual underpass.
Any other thing that really stands out in your mind is something? I mean, there are so many projects. Pick one and.
Well, there's so many. I would just, it's kind of like when you start naming people and forget somebody. But the projects that you see that are coming out of the ground now, and we just came out with. There's an article that said there's $200 million that's either started or going to be started in Richfield in new commercial and housing projects. And I will tell you that there's more on in the pipeline that's just coming up now. That's on top of that 200 million. So there's so much potential coming for Richfield, and I think the things that I'm most proud of that we got done during the time that I've been city manager is we had a lot of worn out city facilities that needed to be replaced.
Yes,
they were, let's face it, City Hall was awful.
Yes.
We replaced City Hall. We have one of the finest city halls in the metropolitan area. And everybody comes to our city hall and says, oh my gosh, this is just a great place. And our citizens do. And we had a horrible maintenance building that was literally falling apart, and actually on some of the stalls the roof was caving in. And we rebuilt the one that we have next to the airport there. And then some of the other amenities that I think are so important is we got the All Veterans Memorial done. For a community that was settled by World War II vets, I think it's so important to have a Veterans Memorial. And, people will tell you that that's one of, short of Fort Snelling, that's one of the most beautiful Veterans Memorials that you're going to find here in the Twin Cities. And I think all of Richfield should be very proud of it. I certainly am extremely proud of it. So, again, there are, there's so many projects, what has happened on the east end of town with the Target and the Home Depot that's there, and all the apartment buildings that are getting built, and all the interest in doing more at Cedar Point 2. It's just fantastic.
Well, and I know in all the Richfield, people say, well, it's built for South Minneapolis. But that's okay. We're bringing in a lot of people to shop in our Richfield businesses.
Exactly.
I know I was working at the farmer's market from 8 to 10 in the morning, talking about the organic recycling that's coming.
Yep.
And I would say 4 out of 5 people were from South Minneapolis.
Sure.
I mean, it's and I think that inner city connection, and we do things at Minnehaha Park.
Yeah.
And they come to us for farmers market. That's all good.
It is, Maureen. People look at the South Minneapolis Richfield. There's no border. I mean, you're just going down the street a few blocks, and you're going to shop at the Target store. So what if it's in Richfield? Doesn't matter. Or you want to take a walk around Lake Nokomis. Well, so what if it's in Minneapolis? Or you want to jump on the bike trails or do all those things. The beauty for us is that, just as you said, well, if folks are coming from South Minneapolis to spend dollars in stores in Richfield, that's really good for Richfield. That Target store is either the second or third busiest Target in the metropolitan area.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
I know it's busy.
It's busy.
But I didn't. And then they've already remodeled the inside again.
Yes, right.
I mean, it's not that old, but.
No. So, that's a wonderful thing. Again, being good neighbors with South Minneapolis is wonderful. You get the same thing around Lindale Avenue too. One of the things that I think Richfield is starting to get that we haven't had in the past is a lot of really nice restaurants.
Yeah.
And again, I just see more and more of that happening in the future, and Richfield is going to become a real destination for people.
Well, these young people, I call them kids because they are kids to me, but these young people don't necessarily want to be in third or fourth or fifth ring suburbs.
You're right.
They want to be close.
Right.
They want to they want to be able to get to Uptown quickly and all those restaurants. And so,
right.
The housing market just really came roaring back in Richfield, and that's positive.
Oh, absolutely. Part of it is our location.
Yeah.
And, and I think young folks especially, see the value of walking and biking, not spending hours driving to work back and forth, not fighting all that traffic, having the ability to spend more time at home with family, doing the things they want to do. Time off is so valuable for those younger folks, and, they've got the right idea.
They're probably smarter.
They're a lot smarter than I was in that regard.
Yeah. And you can't speak about Richfield without speaking about the relationship with the airport. Granted, we lost Newport Town, and then I forget the name of the area just south of 66.
Rich Acres.
Rich Acres. A lot of us hated to see the golf course go. We hated to see the Little League fields go. But it seems since then things have been kind of quiet. Not too many complaints. Is the airport learning to live with people? I don't know.
Well, I will say this, that in my time as city manager, I really think the airport has made great strides in trying to work with its neighbors. And, Jeff Hamill, I think, appreciated that. The new Metropolitan Airports Director, Brian Ricks, he is very, very conscious of the cities around the airport. And the MAC right now is extremely wonderful to work with.
I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't used to be.
No, it didn't used to be like that. No, I knew the bad old days when it was like this. But
Jeez.
yeah, they really listen to concerns that we have, and they try to be the very best neighbor they can. The other thing is that as technology improves, and we get quieter and quieter and quieter, jet planes, the impacts that that people listen to. My gosh, you were in that area, and you must have felt the roar. And back in the day, I lived in by Boston Field in South Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness, when the planes back in those days, you just put the phone down or whatever you were doing, and but they're so much quieter now, and that's going to continue with what they call the new gen engines that they're putting on planes, both Airbus and Boeing, and it's going to get quieter and quieter for folks.
And it's pluses and minuses, but I think when all is said and done, it's not bad for Richfield to be close to the airport.
No, it's not. It is not bad.
Again, it's we're right next door, and people can stop on the way to and from.
That's right. I mean, and let's face it, the airport is a very important economic engine, and it has a lot of employees. And on any given day, you can see a lot of them in Richfield restaurants. Or shopping in Richfield.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Didn't think about, I thought about people living in Richfield and working at the airport, but it never occurred to me that some of those people come back
for
and
sure.
eat and buy in Richfield.
Yes.
I thought maybe people traveling to and from would stop in. And
Well, what was funny, a story from the golf course back in the day, there would be people who would be on stopovers and flights at the airport, and they knew we had a golf course. They would run over and they would get a couple buckets of balls. We had a really nice driving range.
Yes.
Yeah, they would come over and get a couple buckets of balls and then take the taxi back and get their next flight out. That happened many times.
I had no
Yes.
idea that
Yes.
was going on.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if you got a 5-hour layover,
Exactly.
a 4-hour layer, what
Why not?
Oh, my. Let's see. We talked about that. We've talked about anything in the wisdom you've gained over the years, anything you would do differently? Hard to say, probably.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's not like I don't think I ever made mistakes. I I always wish I could have learned quicker, but those are just things that come with time. I can't think of any one thing that I would say that I would have done over. There was a time when I would have said, I wish I would have jumped off and become the vice president of human resources, some big corporation, but I made the right decision doing what I do, and I never realized how much I love what I do, and that's the one thing that's so hard, even after 38 plus years here at Richfield, and 43 years altogether in local government. It's not like I'm tired and I don't have the fire to do it anymore. I do, but there comes a time when it's time for you to move on and let the next person come in, and I feel like I'm leaving at a good time, and it just seems like I guess it's time for me to move on, but it's very hard, very hard.
Well, and things like, I think people have seen your support. I mean, the parks are beautiful. Wood Lake Nature Center, you've been supportive of that. And supportive of Karen Schrag, who's really is Mrs. Richfield, Wood Lake Nature Center. I mean, that's her baby.
Yeah. Right.
And I think you've hired a staff that's so deeply loyal and grateful to be working. How did you ever do that?
You know, I don't know. I think that's probably the most fortunate thing for me. Well, there are a couple of things. One, I have to say, I've been blessed with good city councils and really good people on city council that I could talk to that wanted me to succeed, and just good people. When I look at hiring people, I look at what I see as their values. What are their values? You know, do they have a good work ethic? You know, do they seem like they have integrity? Do you need to have all the nuts and bolts all in line about what you're doing? Now, you can teach a lot of people that, but you can't teach people values, and you can't teach people how to work hard, and you can't teach people how to be loyal. Those are the kinds of things that I look for intrinsically in people, and I think, as I said in the beginning, if you can surround yourself with people like that, you're generally going to be successful, because they'll catch you when you're falling.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
66th Street is going very well, about as well as you expected.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've had in the past few weeks, we've had horrible weather, as you well know, as everybody knows.
Yes.
You know, the gloom and doom of having rain every day, and of course that last piece that hasn't been paved. It's being paved right as we're speaking, but that, you know, that'll be done. But yeah, it would have been nice to get that done sooner. But when it's just mud and mud and mud, obviously you can't put blacktop down. So, but no, the rest of it. And I think folks are looking at it and saying, "Ooh, this looks pretty darn nice." One other quick story is that when I was doing the budget this year, you know, I look at all the revenues coming in from different places, and I looked at what's coming in from fines and forfeits, and part of that is, you know, police fines, and the fines are down. So I said to Public Safety Director, Police Chief Henthorn, what's with this? Why are tickets so far down?" And he looked at me and said, "Well, because 66th Street and Portland Avenue, you can't speed on them anymore, and we've lost a lot of our..." And I thought, that's exactly what we wanted to do, is slow down traffic. And if there was ever the perfect antidote, I just about laughed myself out of my chair when he said that.
Yeah, tear up the street, the main drag, and people can't race down it. I never thought about that, but of course.
And the way it's rebuilt, you know, it's not conducive to speeding anymore. It's about calming the traffic. And that's the whole thing about making those streets walkable, so you can be on the sidewalk and feel safe.
Yeah, yeah. And you have that buffer.
Yes.
And people say, why did they have to take the hoses? And I say, well, they needed a place to put the snow. It's very expensive to truck snow out.
Right.
And I think, you know, as people saw how the street went in and everything, people aren't complaining so much about those houses being taken in between 35 and Penn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that true?
Yes, exactly. I mean, you know, it's so hard to take homes at any time. But, you know, to do it right, to do what we wanted to do, to provide that kind of buffer you spoke of, to provide an opportunity again for people to be on sidewalks with their children and feel safe, and just for the mechanics of being able to plow snow. I mean, there's nothing worse than having no place to store snow. So you go through and you plow the street, and the snow comes flying up and on the sidewalk, and then you go plow the sidewalk, it's like, I mean, really, you've got to have some place to put the snow. And those are things that I know people don't think of that, but it's the kind of things you have to think about too when you're designing streets and wanting to have streets that belong to everybody, to walkers, to bicyclists, to people driving cars, to whatever.
Yeah, yeah. The hub has kind of always been a problem in some ways, but the day of the big boxes are probably gone, as Southdale certainly is finding out, losing Herbergers and Pennies. Any hope? Do you see future interest in the hub?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. It is on the radar.
Oh, it's very much on the radar. I wouldn't be surprised that that we wouldn't see something happening there in the very, very near future. That's too valuable of a spot. And especially now, I mean, look at the location of it. Look at the draw that it would have.
Yeah.
And then look at everything else that's going around it. And once 66th Street is completely finished, again, excellent access on, from Lindale, from South Minneapolis. And I know that Brixmor, the company, the international company that owns the hub, I had been talking to them earlier this year, and they had said they were targeting like 3 shopping centers of theirs that they were going to work on, and one of them was that one. So it's going to happen. They just have to, I think they're kind of waiting for this to settle out and to take a look at what they might put in there. But I'm very excited about it because that's a large area.
Oh, it's
that,
huge.
Yeah, that you could. It would be the biggest thing since Best Buy.
Oh, yes.
And
yes, there's enough space.
Oh, absolutely. And it will happen.
It will
happen.
And yet people like, what is it, TJ Maxx there in the center? That keeps...
Marshall's or?
Marshall's is
Yeah,
there.
yes. Yeah, they'll probably find a way to keep some of those popular businesses in there. The Walgreens location. The one thing they've always wanted is a drive-through. Most new Walgreens have drive-throughs.
Yes.
So there's things that you would do. And the site is so big that when it gets redeveloped, what'll have to happen is they'll have to start where the Rainbow store was, and the buildings behind it, and maybe even the vacant where the Blockbuster used to be.
Yep.
And they'll have to start on that area, and then move their way over. But it's such a big site and such a large project that it's going to have to be staged. But I have no doubt it's happening.
I know the running comment on Facebook in the Richfield community page on Facebook is everybody wants a Hy-Vee store there. But I think I recognize the fact that somebody else owns that property, and it sounds like they don't really intend to sell it at all.
No, but I will say that it would be wonderful to have a Hy-Vee there.
Yeah.
And I don't doubt for a second that a Hy-Vee store would be crazy successful there. If you think about it, it would be crazy successful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, the future for Steve Devich.
See, that's the scary part, Maureen. I've always been able to figure out how to run a city. What I can't figure out is what do I do with myself after it's all over with. When I was in high school and college, I played in different rock bands, and
Oh, really?
yeah, that's part of how I paid my way through college. And
That's a part not many people know.
no, yeah, my mom didn't have a lot of bucks, and so she helped me with as much as she possibly could, and I would be going to school, and weekends I was always playing, in different venues and stuff, and I think I've been pulling out the guitar and playing more and more, and that's something I'd like. Yeah, I played a guitar. Yeah, and so that's something I'm really determined to get back into and do again.
I actually know for a fact that there are older people going back to guitar and doing little gigs around town,
bet.
small coffee shops.
Yeah,
you
bet.
name it.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, well, and there's plenty of places to volunteer, as we both
Well,
know.
yes, absolutely, right.
And well, Richfield. What do you see for Richfield in the future? Get more of the same kind?
Oh, I don't think I'm looking through rose-colored glasses, but I just think that if we keep the momentum going that we've got going right now, and God forbid there's not a recession of something that slows
something
things
like
up,
that.
I see nothing but great future for Richfield. We've been very, I think, very careful and very judicious about how we've done redevelopment, and we've always pushed to get better, higher quality projects, and I just see that happening more and more. We just had a study session. The folks over at Lunds, the Lunds family, they're looking at redeveloping their area, completely remodeling their store to make it a very modern, the most modern, and putting a 6-story apartment project there and a retail pad, and I think that's going to happen. There's just a lot of interest in Richfield, and it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop.
I was wondering, Edina's building so much around, along York Avenue
Yeah.
there. And I'm kind of saying, why aren't they building some of the stuff more in Richfield? And now you're saying the Lunds family has actually taken interest in
Yeah.
that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, and you think, folks living in West Richfield, I mean, you have easy access to all of the shopping and everything over in Edina, but you don't have the traffic congestion of living right there. You can still go back at your Richfield neighborhood and be in a very nice, very well-treed, single-family home neighborhood.
Well, and I remember people being so upset, like, oh, this business moving in, it's going to be chaotic. I've lived for 40 years now behind Southdale Square. Southdale Square has that, well, it's a medium-high wall there along 65th Street. You don't hear boo
No, right.
from them.
Yeah.
They're very nice neighbors, and they
Yes.
keep the landscaping just perfect. So it's something that I don't see any reason why people need to fear it, because you guys will always, the city always buffers. So,
Yes.
and-
Yeah, that's the important thing when you when you have a fully developed city and you're doing more commercial development. You just have to be careful to protect the neighbors, to insulate them as best you can. But the one thing I always say about change, and change happens every day. It happens to me. It happens to you. It happens to your home. It happens to your car. It happens to our city. And to say that you're not don't redevelop or don't put something in the neighborhood. Well, the neighborhood is changing every day, and as change comes toward you, you can't stop it. But successful cities look at change and guide the change in the direction that it needs to go, and that's the best you can do. Again, you can't stop change, but you have to make sure folks understand that guiding change in the right direction will make your city better and will bring you to where you want to be in the end.
Well, that is a very, very wise piece of wisdom for a departing city manager. And again, I think I can speak for speak for Richfield residents in saying thank you for those 38 years. And thanks
Maureen,
for being on the show.
Well, one thing I'd like to add really very quickly, and that is to thank the city of Richfield, and I mean city council members and residents, all the people who were so good to me over the years. So good to me.
Thank you and good night.